Hello and welcome to Study Sessions. My name, of course, is Mr. Boff. Now, this is the second episode in a sequence of episodes looking at A Christmas Carol, and it's for Year 9 students who are reading the novella independently for the very first time, working on the novella and various tasks associated with it for homework. These episodes tie in with that broader process. Now, this is the second episode. The first episode was all about context and the 1840s, poverty, social injustice, the poor law, all those sorts of things, the horrors and terrors of the workhouse and so on. This episode, though, is all about the text's key characters, as well as its themes, big ideas and concepts, and Dickens's messages around Christmas, around social justice, around poverty and the treatment of the poor. So make sure you've listened to episode 1 before you listen to this episode. But if that is the case, if you're all the way through episode 1 and now you're on to this one, we're going to get right into it, starting with a detailed account of the various important characters we meet over the course of the book. We're going to start rather obviously with the protagonist, Ebenezer Scrooge. Now, Scrooge is an elderly miser who, at least initially, despises Christmas and compassion. Scrooge is rich, he's very, very wealthy, but extremely stingy or parsimonious, we might say, and cold-hearted. That is, until the ghostly visits transform him. His journey from a covetous old sinner to a generous, kind benefactor is the central storyline of the text, and it illustrates that most crucial of themes in the book, the theme of redemption. And then we've got Jacob Marley. Now, he is Scrooge's deceased business partner, a ghost condemned to wander the earth, bound by heavy chains that he forged in life through greed. Marley's ghost initiates the story's supernatural element. He appears to warn Scrooge to change his ways and informs him of the impending visit of three spirits. Marley is an embodiment of the novella's moral warning. He is living, or indeed rather dead, proof of the dreadful fate that awaits those who lead a selfish life. And then we're going to look at the first of the three ghosts. Okay, the ghost of Christmas past. This is the first spirit to visit Scrooge, and they appear as a strange, rather ethereal figure that's both young and old at the same time. The ghost of Christmas past is gentle and quiet, with a bright light emanating from its head, almost as though the ghost is a bit like a candle. It's a ghost that represents, among other things, the power and importance of memory. By showing Scrooge scenes from his past, his lonely childhood, his joyful youth with friends, as well as his love, or indeed the end of his love and relationship with Belle, these are moments that have actually, over the course of his life, in some ways hardened his heart. It reconnects Scrooge with lost feelings and reminds him that there were some times, actually, when he wasn't always so bitter. The ghost of Christmas past lesson is one of reflection and regret, softening Scrooge with a combination of remorse and also nostalgia. And then we turn to the second of the three ghosts, the ghost of Christmas present. The second spirit is a jolly giant, a little bit like a large Father Christmas in some ways, wearing a green robe and wreath and holding a torch. This ghost is the personification of joy and generosity, specifically the joy and generosity of Christmas Day. This ghost shows Scrooge how other people, like the Cratchits, like Fred, are celebrating Christmas in the present, despite some hardships. He also reveals the dire personifications of ignorance and want from under his robe, delivering Dickens's most trenchant and obvious social critique. The ghost of Christmas present's booming, friendly demeanour hides actually a very serious message. He teaches Scrooge about the importance of generosity, the happiness that we can find in family and community, but also, most seriously, the urgent need to address the suffering of the poor right now. And then we've got the final of the three ghosts, the ghost of Christmas yet to come, as in the ghost of Christmas future. This is the third and final spirit, and it's a ghost that's depicted by Dickens as a silent, hooded phantom, resembling something like the Grim Reaper. This ghost, unlike the other two, is terrifying and shows Scrooge the consequences if he continues on his current path through life, including showing him the lonely death of an unloved Scrooge and indeed the tragic loss of Tiny Tim. By confronting Scrooge with his own mortality and at the same time the legacy of his actions in life, the ghost of Christmas yet to come instills fear, but also a degree of hope. It's a ghost that pushes Scrooge to desperately vow to change. This spirit's lesson is also about fate. It warns that the future is not set in stone if, and it's a big if, one heeds or pays attention to the warnings of the present. Let's think about Bob Cratchit, Scrooge's kind-hearted and patient clerk. Now, Bob Cratchit is a poor man. He supports a large family. Bob represents the working poor of Victorian England. Despite working very long hours for Scrooge on an absolutely pitiful salary, Bob Cratchit remains optimistic and a loving father. He even toasts Scrooge as the founder of the feast out of gratitude, even though, let's be honest, Scrooge is pretty terrible towards him. Bob's humble goodness and his struggle to provide for his children, especially the poignantly ailing Tiny Tim, help to soften Scrooge's heart. After Scrooge's transformation, Bob is overjoyed to find that his employer, Ebenezer Scrooge, becomes his friend and his patron. Then we've got Tiny Tim, Tim Cratchit. Now, Bob Cratchit's young son, disabled and ill, is also overflowing with innocence and goodness. Tiny Tim is the emotional centerpiece of the story's appeal to us. Despite his physical ailments, Tim is generous in spirit, famously saying, "God bless us everyone," at the Christmas table. His precarious health, and indeed the vision of his death in the future, is a major catalyst for Scrooge's change. Tiny Tim symbolises the innocent victims of inequality and poverty, those who suffer most from society's neglect, and yet, at the same time, who are most deserving of help. In the end, thanks to Scrooge's help, Tim is saved, underscoring the novella's message of hope and the value of each and every life. Then we've got Fred. Is Fred my favourite character? Quite possibly. He's Scrooge's cheerful nephew, the son of Scrooge's sister Fan. Fred loves Christmas and persistently, probably more persistently than I would, invites Scrooge to join his family celebrations each year, despite continual annual rejection. He serves as a foil to Scrooge, warm-hearted, jovial, and forgiving. Fred seems to genuinely pity his uncle rather than resenting him or feeling any sense of anger towards him. He delivers a great speech at the very beginning of the book in Stave 1 about how Christmas is a time when people open their hearts freely and treat each other kindly. Fred's unwavering kindness, he even welcomes Scrooge in at the end with open arms, helps to demonstrate that Scrooge has family who care for him and that it's never too late to reconnect. Okay, Fezziwig, wonderful Fezziwig, Scrooge's former employer, remembered during the visit from the ghost of Christmas past. Fezziwig is a symbol of benevolent capitalism with a human face, you might say. He is generous, joyful, and kind-hearted. When young Scrooge worked for him as an apprentice, Fezziwig threw a magnificent Christmas party for his employees. Even though it cost him not very much money, it brought immense happiness to others, including those who worked for him. Scrooge in this moment actually reflects that Fezziwig had the power to make work joyful or miserable. And what did Fezziwig choose? He chose joy. This memory helps Scrooge realise the importance of treating one's employees with warmth and humanity. Okay, Belle, Scrooge's former fiancée, seen during the same visit with the ghost of Christmas past. Belle represents love lost to greed. She famously breaks off their engagement because Scrooge's obsession with wealth has displaced his affection for her. Her calm but heartbreaking words reveal that he is no longer the man that she once loved. Later on, shortly after, Scrooge sees her happily married with children, reinforcing his regret. I always feel like that must be a moment of real serious emotional pain for Scrooge. Belle's character reminds us of what Scrooge gave up, what he lost, in and through his pursuit of money. She's a symbol of emotional richness sacrificed on the altar of financial gain. And then, finally, ignorance and want. Now, these are two allegorical children revealed beneath the robe of the ghost of Christmas present. They are emaciated, ragged, and crucially, frightening. And they represent the consequences of society's neglect. Ignorance, the boy, symbolizes a lack of education and understanding, while want, the girl, represents extreme grinding poverty. The spirit warns that these two figures pose a grave threat to society's future if ignored. Dickens uses ignorance and want to personify the pressing, urgent need for social reform. Beware them both, he writes, but most of all, beware this boy. Their presence in the story is a powerful critique of the Victorian attitude toward the poor and uneducated, and a reminder of the dangers, the social dangers, of turning a blind eye to social inequality. Now that we've thought about these key characters, run through the novella's key characters, we're going to dig into the deeper meaning of the story. We've thought in episode 1 about why Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol, but now we need to be thinking, okay, well, what themes or messages was he conveying? So in this next section, we're going to analyse those key messages of the book, focusing on social responsibility, the divide between rich and poor, and the possibility of redemption. And I'm going to try to show how Dickens weaves these themes through the various events that we will be reading about. So, for many people, A Christmas Carol is a little bit spooky and heartwarming Christmas tale, but it's also very much a moral fable. Dickens uses Scrooge's supernatural adventure to deliver some very pointed commentary on society and some timeless lessons about human values. So, let's look at these key themes. Starting with social responsibility and compassion. One of the strongest messages in A Christmas Carol, maybe the strongest, is the importance of social responsibility, the duty we have to care for one another, especially the less fortunate. At the story's start, Scrooge embodies the very opposite of this. He is the picture, the epitome of selfishness and indeed callous indifference to suffering. He believes his only business is making money, and he famously says, "It's not my business," when the charity collectors implore him to help the poor. In fact, Marley's ghost comes specifically to correct that mindset. When Scrooge claims, "But you were always a good man of business, Jacob," it's Marley's ghost that cries out, wringing his hands, "Business? Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business." Now, this powerful quotation from Marley's spirit is Dickens's direct sermon to us as readers. It's a rebuke of the idea that people can shrug off the suffering of others as not their concern. Marley admits that in life, he, just like Scrooge, neglected the common welfare, and now he pays the price in death, tormented by guilt. Through Marley, and later through the Ghost of Christmas Present's harsh lesson on ignorance and want, Dickens declares that we are all each other's business. We have a moral obligation to be compassionate and help those in need. Throughout the visits, the ghostly visits, Scrooge is taught, or at least able to reconnect with, empathy. He sees how his actions affect others. For example, how his refusal to pay Bob Cratchit a living wage contributes to the plight of Tiny Tim. The Ghost of Christmas Present pointedly shows Scrooge, the figurative children, ignorance and want, to personify and also personalize social problems. The spirit's warning about the boy ignorance, beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, is essentially Dickens warning society that ignoring education, ignoring poverty, will lead to society's ruin. Scrooge's earlier flippant questions, are there no prisons, are there no workhouses, are thrown back at him by this spirit, emphasizing how cruel and inadequate those institutions were as solutions to poverty. By the story's end, Scrooge wholeheartedly embraces social responsibility. He gives to charity, he assists the Cratchits, and he becomes as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as one could be. The transformation or spiritual and moral metamorphosis illustrates Dickens's ideal. If individuals show practical, daily forms of benevolence towards those struggling on the lower rungs of society, it not only helps the needy, but also redeems the giver. The novella urges readers to practice kindness, generosity, and empathy all year round, not just at Christmas. It's a call to moral action wrapped up in a festive ghost story. Dickens, remember, wanted his readers to open their hearts and actively lighten the burden of others. In his words, no one is useless in this world who lightens the burden of another. That's a quite famous Dickens quotation. So, in summary, A Christmas Carol teaches that caring for our fellow human beings, treating mankind as our business, is essential for a healthy society, yes, absolutely, but also for our own spiritual well-being. The next key theme is really around class inequality and social injustice. It's a central theme, the stark inequality between the wealthy and the poor in Victorian society, and indeed Dickens's critique of that divide. Through characters and scenes, A Christmas Carol vividly contrasts wealth and poverty and exposes many, many times the injustices faced by the poor. On one side, we've got Scrooge, who's very wealthy. He's a successful moneylender and businessman, and yet lives miserably, hoarding his wealth, refusing to spend even on basic comforts. Remember how he keeps his office cold to save on coal. On the other side, we've got families like the Cratchits, who work hard and remain good-spirited, but struggle to survive on very small incomes. The Cratchits' rather meagre Christmas dinner, a small goose and pudding, is described with such tenderness by Dickens that we feel how precious that feast is to them. When the Ghost of Christmas Present says that if nothing changes, Tiny Tim will die, Scrooge is distraught and regretful, likely in this moment realizing that his greed has real consequences on the lives of people like the Cratchits. Dickens uses Scrooge's earlier words to highlight the cruel attitude some of the rich had towards the poor. Scrooge parrots the ideas of thinkers like Thomas Malthus, who argued that resources were limited and that poverty, even starvation, was a necessary evil to control overpopulation. Hence, Scrooge's surplus population remark. He's essentially suggesting that some lives, the poor, the sick, are excess and not worth saving. Dickens absolutely loathed and rejected this kind of thinking. In the story, he flips it. By making us emotionally invest in Tiny Tim, Dickens shows us that every life, especially the most vulnerable, is precious. There's no such thing as a surplus person. When Scrooge begs to know whether Tim will live, the ghost of present retorts with Scrooge's own callous words. This dramatic irony condemns those in society who, just like Scrooge, are willfully blind to the suffering of the poor going on around them. The theme of class inequality is also explored in some interesting ways through Fred and through Fezziwig. Fred isn't poor, he's likely a kind of middle-class Victorian gentleman, but unlike his uncle, he uses his relative comfort to spread joy, inviting the less fortunate to dinner. Fezziwig, Scrooge's former employer, was a successful businessman, but is remembered fondly for spending just a little money to throw a Christmas ball for his apprentices. Dickens contrasts Fezziwig's generosity with Scrooge's parsimony to show that being wealthy does not have to mean being cruel. You can choose to be benevolent. The businessmen who laugh about a colleague's funeral and the thieves pawning stolen goods from a dead man in State 4 provide a biting commentary on a society corrupted by money and devoid of human feeling at its extremes. Scrooge's own lifestyle, lonely, lacking in joy, despite all of his wealth, is a critique of the hollow values of pure capitalism unchecked by kindness and generosity. So by the end, when Scrooge changes, Dickens is implying that the divides between classes can be bridged by empathy and generosity. Scrooge raises Bob's salary and even becomes a second father to Tim, essentially helping lift that family up. Dickens doesn't propose specific political solutions in this story. Instead, he appeals to personal conscience. He asks the fortunate to treat the less fortunate as fellow humans and friends. The novella suggests that Christmas is a time when these class divides and barriers can soften and break down a little. As the Ghost of Christmas Present shows, on Christmas, the wealthy and the poor alike celebrate and charity can abound. Dickens was urging his contemporaries to carry that spirit beyond Christmas. Indeed, one impact of A Christmas Carol was that it actually spurred charitable giving. After reading it, people, reportedly, gave more generously to the poor. The story's enduring lesson on this theme is clear. Wealth has responsibilities attached. Those who have the means and ability should use them to assist and uplift others, not ignore and neglect them. And conversely, it points out the richness of spirit often found in poorer families, just like the Cratchits, was something the wealthy might learn from. In sum, Dickens shines a light on the social injustices of his time, of the 1840s. Poverty, child suffering, the failings of institutions like the workhouse, and calls for compassionate action to address the gulf between rich and poor. And so we come to the final key theme that I'll be talking about in this episode. A story, it is fundamentally a story of redemption. The idea that no matter how late in life, a person can change for the better and make amends for past wrongs. Ebenezer Scrooge's overnight metamorphosis from bitter, lonely miser into generous, joyful benefactor is one of the most famous character transformations in all of literature. Dickens wants us to believe in the possibility of redemption for anyone, even someone as far gone as Scrooge. What is it that triggers that redemption? Well, it's a combination of reflection, empathy, and fear. The ghost of Christmas past, softens his heart with poignant memories and regret. The ghost of Christmas present opens his eyes to the humanity of others and fills him with concern, particularly for Tiny Tim. And the ghost of Christmas yet to come gives him a terrifying wake-up call about his own mortality and legacy. By confronting the truth about himself and seeing the impact of his life on other people, Scrooge undergoes a profound, dramatic change in perspective. Importantly, he chooses to embrace and accept that change. At the climax in Stave 4, facing his neglected grave, Scrooge breaks down and sincerely pleads for the chance to improve. I will honour Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach, he vows, weeping. This moment is essentially his repentance. He's learned his lesson and desperately wants to alter the course of his life. The joyous Stave 5 confirms that his transformation is genuine. Dickens makes it clear that Scrooge's redemption isn't just about feeling sorry, it's shown through action, generosity, kindness, and a complete change in behaviour. Scrooge laughs and smiles, seemingly for the first time in years, donates to charity, helps the Cratchits, reconnects with his nephew. The narrator notes that Scrooge knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge, and that he became like a second father to Tiny Tim. And touchingly, it's said that it was always said of him, Scrooge, that he knew how to keep Christmas well. The idea is that he didn't just have a one-day change. He maintained his goodness throughout the year, year after year. Through Scrooge's redemption, Dickens conveys a really hopeful message. No one's beyond saving. Even a person who's made terrible choices and lived selfishly can find their way to goodness. It's a very Christian theme as well, as fits a Christmas story, echoing those concepts of salvation and repentance. But you don't even necessarily need to see it in religious terms. It's universally uplifting to think that people can learn and grow, that it's never too late to become a better human being. The theme of redemption is part of why the story endures and feels so satisfying. Watching Scrooge redeem himself gives readers of the novel or novella a sense of hope that others, and maybe ourselves, that we can change our negative ways, repair relationships, and lead a more meaningful life. Dickens also implies that redemption brings personal joy and freedom. When Scrooge is redeemed, he's happier than he's ever been. The chains that bound Marley were metaphorical for his failures in life. Scrooge, by changing, avoids Marley's fate and essentially breaks the chains that were already starting to form around him. So in transforming, Scrooge not only saves others, like little Tiny Tim, but also saves himself from a lonely and regret-filled end. The story's final scenes demonstrate the joy of living in harmony with others. Scrooge's laughter, his playful interaction with the boy outside, the warm reception at Fred's, and the surprise for Bob all show how much spiritually richer Scrooge's life becomes. Dickens's message to readers is to embrace these values, the values of generosity, of love, of compassion, but embrace them now. Don't wait, or you might find it's too late. But if you have neglected them, redemption is still possible. In a broader sense, then, the redemption theme ties back to Dickens's social message. Just as an individual can change, society too can change for the better. If Scrooge can turn a new leaf, maybe those in power with wealth in Dickens's time could also wake up and use their position to help others, transforming society into one where everyone can celebrate and thrive. The novella ends on then a very optimistic note that encapsulates all of its themes. Kindness and Christmas spirit triumph over bitterness, and the future is brighter if and when compassion takes hold. As Tiny Tim's enduring line blesses us at the end, God bless us everyone, Dickens invites the audience to feel the inclusive, redemptive spirit of the season and to carry it forward. So, to sum up then, A Christmas Carol is rightly a beloved classic, not just because it's a little cosy Christmas ghost story, but because it speaks to some fundamental human values. When we strip away the Victorian setting, some of the antiquated old-fashioned terms, even the supernatural elements, we've got a story about human empathy, social conscience, and hope. It's remarkable in many ways that a novella written and published in 1843 in response to some very specific social injustices at the time still resonates so deeply today. The struggles between rich and poor, the call for kindness, the idea of personal redemption, these are all as relevant in the 21st century in 2025 as they were in the 19th. We see in this book how literature can influence society. Dickens's tale actually did change how some Victorians viewed Christmas and charitable giving. The book's immediate popularity revived the Christmas traditions of charity and family celebration. In fact, Dickens has been called the man who invented Christmas. It's a little bit exaggerated, but he definitely did, with this book, shape Christmas as a time of generosity and festivity. More importantly, the book invites us to ask ourselves, who are the Scrooges today? And who might be the Tiny Tims in need of help? It challenges us to honour Christmas in our hearts all the year round, which really means to keep the spirit of compassion alive every day. So, just as I begin to wrap up, let's remember some of the key takeaways from the novella. 1. We all have a responsibility to care about others' well-being. Ignorance and want in society are problems we all have to address, or else we all suffer. 2. Money and success are meaningless if they're not accompanied by kindness and human connection. As shown by Scrooge and Marley, wealth can become a curse if used selfishly, whereas generosity brings joy. 3. No matter how late in your life, a person can change. Scrooge's transformation illustrates that with self-reflection and empathy, one can undo a lifetime of bad choices and make a positive difference moving forward. And finally, 4. The Christmas spirit, charity, mercy, love is a powerful force for good, capable of thawing even the coldest of hearts and fostering community and togetherness across social and economic divides. So, as I conclude this episode of Study Sessions, let's take Dickens's lesson to heart. May we be a bit less like the old Scrooge and a bit more like the redeemed Scrooge, not just at Christmas, but all year round. And so, in the spirit of Tiny Tim, who got the last word in Dickens's tale, God bless us, everyone. As always, thank you so much for listening. I hope this has been a useful episode, looking both at key themes, Dickens's message, and also those crucial characters in the book. In the next series and sequence of episodes, we're going to be working stave by stave, an episode per stave, summarising what goes on, key ideas in that chapter or stave, all the key knowledge. It's going to really, really help you understand, comprehend, engage with, and enjoy the book. Okay, so happy reading. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I will see you on the next one.